What's up, everybody? Jackson Fuller here, along with Tanner Barth from WWAY, and our weekly tradition continues for a fourth time this week, previewing some high school football games here in the Mideastern Conference here in Wilmington. Tanner, how you doing today? We had a big week last week. Hoggard, an impressive win over West Brunswick. New Hanover got their first victory. Before we jump into the first four games, how you doing, and what was kind of your biggest takeaway from last week?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think, Hoggard proved that they are once again one of the teams to beat in the Mideastern Conference and kind of put their stamp on, being the favorite, I guess you would say, for right now until, Topsail or, one of those other teams can step up and beat Hoggard. The Vikings look like they're in the driver's seat for the Mideastern Conference, and should be another great week of high school football coming up, Jackson, and it's hard to believe we're already halfway through the season. I mean, week 4 coming up. We got to start looking at playoff implications, whether we want to or believe it's too early in the season. It's not at this point.
I know it's kind of crazy. I mean, it looks like Hoggard's going to run away with the 4A crown, and the 3A is still kind of wide open. Topsail and West Brunswick are the leaders, but Hanover got a win last week. It sounds like they're playing better. We can save that maybe for next week, but you're right. Within the next couple of weeks, it's time to start talking about playoffs and who's going to book an automatic berth and who might have to rely on the wild card to get in. But, before we get started, I think we want to shout out those lacrosse and soccer teams we've got locally still in the playoffs. I know we've got more than a handful, it feels like, especially on the lacrosse side. A lot of teams like Topsail boys and girls, the Hoggard boys doing well. Those games are played Wednesday night. I think you guys will be watching this video on a Thursday. But New Hanover, Hoggard, and Ashley Soccer all with playoff games on Thursday night. Pretty impressive, I think, from our local teams. What's that?
Yeah, I was going to say a busy time. We got a lot going on. Boys soccer playoffs, girls soccer just getting started, softball. There's just so many things going on. But, yeah, our lacrosse team, 6 still in. Soccer, at least for my coverage, we have 4 still in. So a lot of great representation, and hopefully one of those teams can get on a roll and see if they can't bring home a state championship.
It's good until football season's over. It's going to be a mad dash to the finish for us covering all the sports here in high school across North Carolina. But all right, let's jump into this week 4 of high school football. We're going to set the lines like we always do. Pretend we are the Las Vegas bookies looking at Southeastern North Carolina high school football, and each of us is going to say what we think the spread will be. Let's start with the conference leaders and work our way down. So that's Hoggard is at Laney this week. The Vikings are 3-0. The Buccaneers are 0-3. Two teams kind of both had high aspirations but have gone different ways to start this season, especially on the offensive side of the ball. I think that's what's held Laney back the most so far. I'm going to say Hoggard minus 14.5. I think 2 scores sounds about right. I think Hoggard's playing really well. And, Laney, I think, we had high expectations. I still have high expectations for that program under Luke Little. Just, it's a tough year to be a first-year head coach with COVID and, no 7-on-7s for his son, the sophomore quarterback Ty Little. Been a tough start for the Laney Buccaneers. I'm giving Hoggard the edge by 14.5. What do you say, Tanner?
I'm going to go with 20. I think, that may be stretching a little bit, but I could really see like a 27-7, a 34-14 type of ball game. I think, just based on the reason, why I'm expanding that spread is how prolific the Hoggard offense has been and, their ability to run the football, especially last week in over 360 yards. Their front line really wore down a good West Brunswick defense and kind of ran all over them. So that's kind of why I've expanded it. I could see it being a close game, but I'm going to stick with that 20. I think it'll be a 2-3 score game with ultimately the Vikings coming out on top.
Yeah, I think the one thing that I think if you think about what's people that have improved, the units that have improved the most from the start of the season to where we are now, which has only been 3 weeks, but that Hoggard offensive line, against New Hanover the first week of the season, they really struggled to kind of create anything on the ground. They scored off 2 blocked punts and a long touchdown pass. But the past 2 weeks, Paul Rowland who's the other running back? God, his name's escaping me. Scott Williams? Hoggard's got 3 or 4 running backs this year, but Paul Rowland, and Gabe Johnson, Sam Jones have all shown that they can run the football, and they've really gotten going with it. I mean, they had 366 rushing yards last week.
Yeah.
That's going to lead to a win almost every time, I feel like. So I'm with you. Hoggard, their offense has gotten rolling over the past couple weeks, and I think they should be able to handle Laney. The next conference leader is Topsail, also 3-0. coming off a really good win over South Brunswick on Saturday, and they're hosting another winless team, Ashley, who had an opportunity. They were winning, I think, at halftime or early in the third quarter against North Brunswick. R.J. Green led the Scorpions back, so Ashley drops to 0-3. I'm going to set this spread here at 16.5. I can't see Ashley slowing down Gavin Ellis, DeMar Cowell, and Bernie Burns. That offense has been pretty darn prolific to start this season, and I think it continues this Friday night. What's your spread, Tanner?
I'm going to go 18.5. I think we'll see Ashley's offense, come to life maybe a little bit and score some points. But you mentioned it, Jackson. No one's really, the closest team that's been coming to slow down, I guess, Topsail this year has been Laney, and that was in game 1 of the season when they held them to 20 points. Other than that, 54 against New Hanover, 45 against South, and I think it'll be tough for them to be able to hold them down. But give me Topsail to come out with a win in that one. About a 18 to 20 point spread somewhere in that area.
Yeah, and I think one thing that coaches, players are learning here is you put a Division I athlete at quarterback and tell them to make a play, and that's a pretty good offensive design in high school football, especially with a shortened season with not much practices coming in. Gavin Ellis has been super impressive, but he's also throwing it pretty well. 9 for 11, I think, last week against South Brunswick. So the Pirates look really good, and it's shaping up. They've got a big one. I think they play West Brunswick next week, and then it's Hoggard after that. If they could get past West Brunswick next week, that Hoggard Topsail game is going to be basically the conference championship. So, but plenty of time before then. Next up, South Brunswick at New Hanover. The Wildcats, as we mentioned earlier, they got off the losing skid last week. Another really impressive performance by running back Raz Chandler. They're 1-2. South Brunswick lost to Topsail after opening their season with a win over North Brunswick. They're 1-1. I could see this game being pretty close just because South Brunswick's got a good defense. I set it at New Hanover -6.5, just saying I think a touchdown is about right for that spread. But, South Brunswick's, they played Hoggard really close last year. Topsail's offense kind of got away from them. New Hanover's maybe could do the same, but I'm going to say 6.5 right now for New Hanover. I think that if South Brunswick's defense comes to play, this could be a close game.
I'm going to I'll stay in the same realm, but I'm going to go New Hanover 10.5. I think, just based on what I watched a little bit of the game on ATMC between, between Topsail and South Brunswick, and they had trouble slowing down the run, especially with Gavin Ellis. And we all know what Raz Chandler has done. So, I think they're going to have a little bit of trouble slowing down the run. It'll be if that South Brunswick offense can, be there with them. Will it be the New Hanover team we've seen the first couple of weeks? Will it be the New Hanover team we saw last week that put up, nearly 50 points and had a chance to, kind of put a statement win and get things in the right direction? So I'm going to go 10.5 New Hanover.
Yeah. And I do think, it'll be interesting the rest of the season to see the New Hanover defense, how it performs, because look, I think when we get to the end of the year, we might look back at that Topsail game as an outlier, just because I think Coach Dimmick spoke to me on Friday night saying, hey, Topsail did some things that they hadn't shown on film. They kind of let Gavin Ellis and DeMar Cowell loose in some ways that, they really weren't ready for. And it surprised their defense. And he tipped his hat to Coach Inman, said it was a great game plan. And, I think, but they got back to basics and, only gave up 7 points to Laney. I think by the end of the season, that New Hanover defense is going to be closer to the performances against Laney and Hoggard than they were to Topsail. If that's the case, I agree with you. I think the game, New Hanover could win by multiple scores this Friday night. I just have a funny feeling I think South Brunswick's going to hang around for a little bit on Friday.
Yeah, and that's really interesting you mentioned that, especially the Topsail and New Hanover game, Jackson, because, we mentioned that as of right now, Hoggard's got the upper hand to probably be the automatic qualifier in Class 4A. That 3A is going to be stacked. I mean, it could come down to the wire, but, if you look at it, if you're New Hanover, you realistically got to win out to give yourself a chance because, you've already lost to Topsail and you've already lost to West Brunswick. And so
you have to win out and you have to hope for help. You have to hope West Brunswick beats Topsail.
Or excuse me, they have not played West Brunswick, but that loss to Hoggard at the beginning of the year. So you got to. And it could be a jumbled mess at the end of the season. I know we've had that at times in the past, but I'm excited to watch that unfold and watch the rest of the Mideastern Conference teams kind of evolve.
Yeah, I hope with the smaller playoffs this year that all three of those teams still make it, because I think all three of those teams are playoff teams this year, but there's no guarantee. All right, and then finally we'll go out to Charlotte, North Brunswick at West Brunswick. The Scorpions are 1-1 on the year. West Brunswick is 2-1. West Brunswick shutout lost to Hoggard on Friday night. The Scorpions were able to beat Ashley, a comeback win, as I mentioned, behind RJ Green. I covered this game last year, and it was 17-0 West Brunswick, I think, the final. And I mean, I was surprised. I left the game thinking, how did West Brunswick score 17 points? It was two dominant defenses. I think it's going to be the same thing. I think it's going to be very low scoring. I'm going to go West Brunswick -6.5, give them the same spread I gave New Hanover, a touchdown. I think their defense is a little bit better than North Brunswick's. I think Monzel Campbell and the offense get a little bit back to life after the Hoggard game, but I still expect a very low scoring game. What do you think?
I'm going to go 12 New Hanover, or not New Hanover, geez, it's been that kind of day. 12 West Brunswick. I think they'll bounce back a little bit, but like you said, I don't rule out a 12-14 nothing type of ball game, But also I think that win's going to give Brian Davis and his squad a little bit of a confidence boost, a little bit, get things going with RJ Green at quarterback. And whichever quarterback they end up playing in this game, it's going to be a tall task. And I think we'll see West, though, come out motivated. I think they'll be thinking, man, we didn't show up against Hoggard, and Hoggard ran all over us. And so I think they'll come out with a little bit of sense of urgency this week and know that it's a must win for them to keep their playoff hopes alive. And I think we'll see a good ball game down there, but I do ultimately think it'll be West Brunswick coming out on top.
Yeah. And you know what? I think West Brunswick, they lost, losing Javion McCray. Their offense, they lost some playmakers. They lost DeAndre Clarita. They lost a couple big pieces from last year's team that beat Hoggard, and Hoggard was able to kind of take advantage of them having a slightly weaker defensive line than they did last year. But I think West Brunswick's still a very talented team, and if they won out, and finished second in the conference, I wouldn't be surprised at all. But a lot of football to be played there. So, all right, we've set the lines now. We're going to do our weekly one big question. What's the biggest question coming into the week, and one bold prediction? We'll start with a question. And Tanner, my biggest question is, can any of the winless teams create some momentum this week? And by the two winless teams, that's Laney and Ashley. They both have very tough opposition this week against Hoggard and Topsail. Can either of those teams hang around, make it a close game, and get some momentum going into the last stretch of the season? I think Laney especially, they've played a really tough schedule to start the year. I mean, they've already played New Hanover, Topsail, and West Brunswick, and now Hoggard. That's the four best teams in the league, it looks like. Can they get some momentum going this week against Hoggard, and then, hopefully close the year with 2 or 3 wins? So and then Ashley the same way. I think we came into the year expecting Ashley under Wilson Helms to get better, but struggle again in the league. You're playing a Topsail team that is in first place right now. It's still a 3A school, and Ashley's still a 4A school. Can you, keep it close, maybe, fight into the fourth quarter and get some momentum for the last stretch of the year where, like Laney, Ashley might have some more winnable games coming up?
And you talk about, the teams that are winless in the conference. My biggest question is, can New Hanover keep the ball rolling? We've seen time and time again, it was a low-scoring game offensively against Hoggard. New Hanover, they came out, did the job offensively, or against Topsail, did the job offensively, couldn't get the job done. But they kind of put it all together in their last game against Laney, both defensively and offensively. Can Dylan Dimmick's squad continue to keep the ball rolling and, kind of, I guess, give us glimpses of, what New Hanover football could be going forward and what they have been in the past. And, that's one of the best teams in the conference. So that's my biggest question is, can they keep the ball rolling, continue to look impressive? And, you talked about that outlier game. We can look back on Topsail and, if they can keep the ball rolling, that may be one that we say, man, they don't even look like the same team from, the Hoggard or that Topsail game.
Yeah, and look, New Hanover, they committed 5-6 turnovers against Topsail and lost by 12. I know that's a game when Coach Dimmick goes back at the end of the season and say, we probably should have won that one. But, on that Friday night in Hampstead, Topsail was the better team and deserved to win. I kind of hope we get maybe a rematch in the playoffs like we have the past couple of years, but we'll see. All right, and then one bold prediction for this week. Tanner, I'll go first. My bold prediction is I think Gavin Ellis, 4 touchdowns this week, combined running and passing. Honestly, it's not too bold. It's about what he's been averaging, but hey, 4 touchdowns for a quarterback in high school football is a lot, so I'm going to stick with that as my bold prediction. What do you think this week?
I think we're going to see the Hoggard defense post a shutout
Okay.
I think they're going to. I mean, I've just been impressed with them, and I think anytime you could run the football, especially in high school football, it really controls the clock and allows your defense and offense to do what you want. And I think they have a shot to come out and post a shutout against Laney. But also at the same time, it hurts me because I think. I think Luke Little's turning into a good quarterback, and he's got a weapon in Connor Poe that I think could be a major college football receiver at some point in his in his career here shortly. But I'm going to go with Hoggard posting the shutout. That's my, I guess my biggest surprise or my takeaway or whatever.
That would be back to back, and I think it's time to start talking. Hoggard, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, had one of the best defenses in the state. It looks like they don't really have any guys that are like bona fide college Division I prospects, but they've got so much depth. Jackson King is he makes plays every night. It seems like at safety. Up front with Desmond Fullard and Ricky Wheeler, they just can run guys in and out. It's definitely one of the best defenses, in this part of the state and probably across the state. You mentioned, oh gosh, I mentioned, it's one of those days, Tanner, college prospects. I want to give a shout out to West Brunswick's Carter Wyatt, who's, we talked
racking him up.
Getting offers. He's got now Duke and Georgia Tech have come and offered him 11 total as of 12:30 on this Wednesday afternoon. Sure, more in the ACC are coming, and he's going to have a lot of choices to choose from. And he's a special player. It'll be exciting to see kind of what he looks for in a school and where he chooses whenever that time does come. So, Tanner, where you're headed this Friday night?
I do not yet. We're still trying to play it out. Everything's things are kind of spread out this week again, so it's a little bit tougher for our camera crews to decide which games and where we're going to be at. But we'll try and get as many of them covered this Friday night. And as always, you can tune into the fifth quarter WWAY News at 11 on Friday nights. Best high school football highlights and analysis the area has to offer, and hopefully another exciting week of football. And as I always say at the end of each week, but it becomes more important now, every game becomes just that much more important as we start getting closer to, the end of the season here. It's hard to say that in, the middle of March and week 3, but it's true at this point. One loss here or there or a win could bump you in and out of the playoffs here as we go forward.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'll be over at Legion this week watching the South Brunswick-New Hanover game. Just kind of looking at the schedule, I was like, I don't know when I'm going to get back to New Hanover after this week, just because, we got Topsail West Brunswick and then the Topsail Hoggard games are coming up. So I'm going to go over to Legion Stadium, get a look at Raz Chandler. He's had such a phenomenal season. It's going to be fascinating to see what kind of yardage he finishes the season with in a 7-game season, regular season. So, but all right, guys, I appreciate everybody watching so much. As always, thank you, Tanner, for joining me again. We'll see you guys next Thursday, and everybody enjoy week 4 of high school football here in Southeastern North Carolina.